In this video, I'm going to show you guys how you can scrape the Steam store. You can get out the data, and specifically in this case, we're looking at the discounted prices here for some of these titles. So what we're doing is we're on the top sellers page for action, and this is a infinite scroll page. So if we get to the bottom, down here, we can see that it just loads more up as we go down. There we go. You can see it just beating it down there. There we go. So we need to be able to do infinite scroll. Now, this is actually just an HTML page. So the first thing that I would want to do is I want to look at the network tab, and I want to know what it's doing when it is scrolling down. So I've had this open whilst I've been doing the scrolling, and we can see here we've got quite a lot of different bits of information. Now, the ones we're interested in here are the XHR, the query, and start equals. You can just see that one there. So if I click on this one and go to the response, we can see that success, we got a success, and we can see it's returning the results, the HTML of the results, and all of that information is all the way across there. It's quite difficult to see, but that actually has all of the information of the game. So we can, if I just find one, there we go. You can see there's one that's got a price in it. I've lost it, but that's the actual HTML for here. So what we can do is if we go back to the headers, we can see the request URL that we hit. So if I copy that and put that into my browser, we can see that we get all of that information back. So what we can do is we can take this info and then scrape that and then ask for the next page, the next page, the next page. So we can see that we have a start number for the query, and a count. Seems to be the maximum you can get on this page is 50. But if we change the start number to 0, we get the first ones. You can see it's Cyberpunk 2077 here. If I go back to the top, there it is. And if I was to change it to start is equal to 50, we should get a different one, and we can see there we have Far Cry 5. So this is a really cool way of finding out where you can actually get the information from easier. So if this was trying to do it a different way, for example, you might have to try and do some kind of rendering of the page and scrolling through. It's not always the best way. You don't necessarily need to do it. So let's get on with our web scraper. I'm going to set the start back to 0, and I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to go to VS Code. So now we're just going to import what we need, and the first one we need is requests, and then we need beautiful soup. So from BS4 import beautiful soup. I can never type this one right. And we're also going to use JSON, because the response from that data that we were just looking at is actually JSON file. And we're also going to be using pandas. So let's do import pandas as PD. So if you don't have any of these installed, you can pip install them. JSON is part of the standard Python library, so you don't need to install that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to say URL is equal to, and I'm going to put that in there for my reference. That should be a 1 at the end. There we go. So now we need to think about how we're going to approach this. So I think we're going to have to do a few things. We're going to want to get the information. So we're going to have one function to get all the data from this URL that we're giving it. And we're going to work with just this one for the moment. And then we're going to look at how we can increment it and how we can get all of the data. But we'll just work with this one for now. We have another function to parse it. And then we're going to have a third one to output the data. I'm going to use a CSV file for this case. So the first one is going to be getting the data. So I'm going to say define, DEF for define. I'm going to say get data. And I'm going to say we're going to give it the URL. And then we are going to do r is equal to requests.get the URL, just like this. Now I'm going to say that our data is going to be equal to dictionary, because it's coming down in a dictionary format, and r.json. And what that'll do is that'll just take the data that we're looking at here, and it will load it into a Python dictionary using a JSON object. So that's all good and well. And then we can return the data, and it is I believe, called results HTML. So this is why we're doing it this way. So we can put that in there. So what's that going to do? Is that is going to go to this URL, download the data, and we're going to convert it, and then we're going to be able to access just the HTML part, because that's the bit that we're interested in at the moment. So I'm going to say, let's check that function works. So I'm just going to say get data URL, and that should, let's print that out to the screen, and we should get a load of HTML come out at the bottom of our terminal. There we go, we can see it all there. And you can start to see it's been a bit more structured in here. So if we have a quick look here, we can see there is a price down here, so we'll be able to get that out. And there's the name somewhere up here too. So we know that that is working, so that's all good. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually pass that information. So I'm going to have a next function, I'm going to call it pass, and we're going to give it the data that comes out of this function. Now we want to take what came out of here, this data, and we want to turn it into a soup. So we're going to say soup is equal to beautiful soup, and we're going to say the data that we get, and we're going to be using the HTML.parser. If any of this is looking a bit too complicated or foreign to you, definitely go back and check out some of my other videos. I'll put some links somewhere on the screen or something, or in the description, that explains this in a bit more detail. That might be more beneficial to you. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to need to check through our HTML code and then see where the information is. So I actually have it in my terminal still here. Now what you can do, if this is too difficult for you to look through, we can either go back to here and we can have a quick look at this as well. So if I hover over the first game, I need to go back to elements. So what I'm noticing here is all of the actual individual sort of game things. You see them changing color as I hover over on the left hand side of the screen. They are all in underneath A tags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if this A tag matches the HTML that we've downloaded, and if it does, I'm going to find all on the A tag so we can get all of these and we can loop through the data inside them. So back to my terminal, I'll try and find one. Here it is, and we can see, not quite sure where it closes, but here it is. We can see there's all of that information we just looked at. So this looks like it's exactly the same, which is exactly what we would expect. So I can say now, let's find all of the A tags. So let's say games is equal to soup.find all A. This should work fine, because if you notice, when we were getting our data back, we were specifically, with this query, we were specifically only getting the HTML for that part of the page. If this query was not returning the HTML for the whole page, it was only returning the HTML for these game parts here. So we can actually easily just use the A tags, because these are the only ones that are going to be there. If we were scraping the whole page, we would have extra A tags because they're the anchor tags for a link, and we wouldn't want to do that. But in this case, it's going to work fine for us. So now I'm going to say for game in games, so we can loop through. We want to be able to get the title, and I'm going to say the price and the discounted price. Now we're going to do a try and accept, because some of them aren't going to have a discounted price, but that will be just fine for this case. As always, try not to use too many try and accepts, because it's not ideal, but for us right now in this little script, it will work just fine. So we're going to get the title, and we are also going to get the, what we could call it, the price, and the original price. No, sorry, that's the discounted price. So the price will be the original one, and the disk price will be the discounted price. Okay, so let's go back to our code, our bar inspect element, sorry, and we'll hover over the name, and we can see that it is in a span with class of title. So we can go ahead and do that. So let's fill that in, and we want to do game.find, and it was a span tag, and the class title. And we want the .text, because we want the text from this element only and not the HTML tags. Okay, the next thing we want to do is find the price. So if we go again and let's hover over here, we can see that we have this, which is the price here. It's got lots of white space around it, and it's call search price. If I take a look at this one underneath, which is actually discounted, we can see that we have two. We have the search price, the call search price discounted, and that has that under it. And the normal one, where has that gone? I've lost it. There, is in search price discounted second row. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to need to do a little bit of Python here, because both of the prices that we're after are actually under this one tag, this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and find the div of class search price, and we're going to try and see what comes out, and then we can do some splits and stuff to make it come out the way we want to. So let's say price is equal to game.find, and let's say it was a div tag, and the class we were looking at was search price. So I'm actually just cutting this short. It will work fine just like this if I show you search price here. Sometimes if it doesn't work, you can copy the whole thing and put dots in between, but I don't think we need to do that in this case. And now we're going to do .text.strip. We're going to see what comes out. I'm going to comment out the disk price for now, and I'm going to just print the title and the price. And we're going to test our function and see what I've missed and what we need to redo. So now we're going to say data is equal to get data. We're going to run our first function on our URL, which is still this one here. I'll move that down a bit, and then we're going to say pass that data. And because I've got a print statement within my function, we can just leave it like that, and let's see what happens. Great, that actually worked. I believe that's probably about 50 results. We can see here that we've got both of the prices. Now if we go back to the website, the discounted price is the second one. So if we look for we're actually getting a slight, there it is. This one, Raft, is £14.99, but now £10.04p. £14.99, £10.04p. So what we want to do is we're going to have to do something with this string, because this is just a text string that's come up. Now, when I'm dealing with prices, I generally don't want the pound sign or the currency in there anyway, because that stops it from being an integer or a float, which means we can't do any mathematics on it when we're analyzing the data. So I'm actually going to do a split on the price. Here I'm going to say .split, and we're going to split it on the pound sign, and we're also going to actually, let's just run that and see what that looks like. Okay, so now it's returning a list. Because we've done our .split here, right at the top of the screen, we've split it out on this. Because there's a pound sign at the start, we're losing it here. So this is returning a pretty consistent list. So the first one, which doesn't have a discount because it's a new game, we can see that in our list, the 0 index is nothing and the first index is the price. And again, with a discounted one, the 0 index is nothing. The first index of the list is the original price, and the second index is the discounted price. So the original price is what we're after here. So I'm going to say index for number 1. Now the discounted price, I'm going to copy all of this again, and I'm going to say down here we can see still it was the second one, so I'm going to go number 2 for the second index on the list. Now I'm going to run this, but you'll see that it will fail because some of the games, as in possibly the first one, doesn't have there. So we've got list index out of range because it doesn't have that file. So this is where we're going to use our try and except. So we're going to say try to do this, except, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to then say if there is no discounted price, I'm going to say that the price is just the price. Now for that will basically just give us 2 complete columns where we could compare the data. So for example, the first one, which is $49.99, the original price and the discount price will be the same, therefore the difference is 0, so there's not that much money off that game in particular. So let's run that again. There we go, we can see $49.99, $49.99, and we've got the other ones right here. So now we've gone and successfully got the data out that we're after. We want to write our third function, which is to output this to a CSV format. I'm going to say is probably the best. So what we need to do is we need to tidy up our parse bit first, so we can actually return something that we can work with. So I'm going to comment out the print statement because we don't need to have that in there now, and I'm going to create a my game dictionary equals rather, and I'm going to say that the title, turn this into a key, is equal to title, and the price, and then the is it the discounted price next? Yes, this price, this price. There we go. And we want to be able to add this to a blank list. So I'm going to add that to the top of my function. I'm going to say games list is equal to, and there we go. And now inside our for loop, we can do games list dot append, and we can stick our newly created dictionary in there, and we'll loop through each time, and we can then return out of this function the full and completed games list. Now our third function is the output function. I always tend to call mine output, and we're going to give it the games list. So we're going to say here's the list of all of the data that we've got. Let's do something with it. I'm just going to collapse these two for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it into a data frame. So let's say games df is equal to pd.dataframe to create a pandas data frame, and we'll say we need to give it the games list. And then we can do gamesdf.to CSV, and we'll give it a name, and we'll just call this games prices.csv. And I'm going to remove the default pandas index when I export it because I don't need it. And then I'm just going to have a print statement to say finished, and we'll put in actually save to CSV. You can put whatever you like in here, doesn't matter. And then we'll just return out of our function. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our output and I'm going to put it underneath, and we need to give it our games list. So what we need to do now is when we return our list out of our parse function, we need to save it into a variable. I'm going to say games list again, and then output that. So now when I run this, we should get another file that has the first, all the results on this page, which was the first 50, saved into a CSV file, all nice and neat. There we go, it's done there. Open that up, and we can see we've got it there. So we've got the title, price, and the discounted price, and we've got all the data there. So that's how you go about doing the first page, which is quite cool. But obviously we want all of the data. If there's only 50 results here, there's not much point in that. You could just see that anywhere. So we want to go through all of the results. Now this is where we need to do a little bit more research and a little bit more looking into how the results are sent back to us. So we already know, if we remember from the start of the video, when we said start is equal to, we could do it incrementing it, and we would start on the next one. So we're having 50 total results. So when we start at 50 the next time, it gets us the next 50 results. So what we want to do is we want to loop through this somehow, but we don't want to do it endlessly. We could say let's do it until it fails, and we could have something in there to handle that and then spit it out. But in our results, if I scroll right to the bottom, I've noticed that there is, right the way down here somewhere, you can just about see it in the bottom corner, a total count here. So that is in the response, we are being told how many total results there are. So what we can do, because we are turning all of this into a JSON object that we can actually manipulate, we could say how many results are there, and we know that we're doing 50 per page. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write myself another function, and it's going to tell me how many total results there are from the search that we're doing. So let's go to our code. I'm going to put this one at the top here, and I'm going to say let's call it total results, and we need to give it the URL. Then let's go ahead and let's copy out from our get data, because we want to do exactly the same thing here, and we're going to say the total results is equal to, and it was data, and that's not the right one, square brackets, and down here we have the key, which was total count, so we can put that in there. So now what we want to do is we want to return out of this function We're going to say int because we want it to be a number, the total results. So let's check that this works, and let's run total results on our URL. Let's get rid of this, paste that in, and run that. And I didn't print it, so nothing came out to the screen. There we go. And we can see we got 6432, which should be the same, 6431. I'm guessing this data changes quite a lot, so we've added an extra one in, so that's great. So what can we do with this? Well, we can create a for loop that ranges in increments of 50, and we can say that for x in range of starting at 0, because we need a 0 for our URL to get the first lot, increment it by 50 until a total of 6432, which will then give us a little bit left at the end. So that should work for us. So let's go ahead and write that out. So I'm going to say for x in range, and need to be a 0, as I said. And now what we can do is we can actually just put our total results here, because it returns the integer of our total results, which is why we returned an integer, and then a comma and 50. And if we now print x, so I'm just going to run that, and we should get a load of numbers incremented by 50, and it goes up to 6400, which should be fine for us, because when we get to the extra ones on the end, it will just return no data. So there'll be nothing there, which is fine. So inside our for loop here, we basically just want to run our function. So we want to say, let's do, I think what we're going to call it data is equal to get data, and we want to give it our URL. So I'm actually going to copy this all out now because we need to change this every time we loop through. And to do so, I'm going to turn it into an f string. And under the start right here, I'm going to get rid of the 0 and I'm going to say x. Because we're doing for x in range, so every time our for loop goes through, x becomes our next increment of 50. That goes into the URL, boom, we get the next page. Fantastic. So when we take that, we want to do games list. I'm actually going to call it something different. Let's just call it games. Is equal to pass the data. And what we're going to need to do now is that because we are returning a list of dictionaries out of our pass function, when we add this to our new list, which I'm actually just going to call results now instead here, we're going to get a list of dictionaries. Now that sounds quite complicated, but it's not really. But what we're going to do is we're going to change our output function. So this at the moment will only deal with our list of dictionaries. It would work with our results. I'll show you, but what we basically get is you don't get all the data out nicely. It comes in lines of different text. So it's not exactly what we want. But what we can do is we can do some list comprehension just to make it nice and tidy. And we're going to say create a new data frame for each iteration of the list of dictionaries, and then add them all together at the end with the concat. This is a pretty good way of doing it. It's good for smaller amounts of data. If you've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lines, this probably could take quite a while, and to be honest, if you're doing that much data, you probably need to find a better way of doing it. But for us, this will work just fine. So I'm going to say our gamesdf is going to be, I'm going to remove this part for now. I'm going to say pd.concat, because we're going to add all of these together, and I'm going to say here, and it's going to be pd.dataframe, and I'm just going to call it, doesn't matter what we call it, let's just do G for games. So dataframe G for G in results, which is this list here. So what we're saying is, I'll change it so it's all consistent. So we're saying within our data here, we're going to be saying our data frame is a flattened version, and it's going to merge them all together with our concat for that one there. So that's going to work for us nicely and well. It might take a little bit more time. What I'm going to do is I've actually just removed the data from the total results there. I'll leave that open so we can see, and I'm going to just test it with 150, which will be 3 pages. So what I'm going to say is, let's come out here, and outside of our for loop, we're going to do output and then results. and we just need to do, instead of results is equal to, we want to do results.append because we want to add this data to our new list. Let's just uncomment those again, and let's run this, and we should get, there's a printout. I did a print games df.head, so we can see that there. And if I come to the CSV file, we can see it's now much longer, and we're up to 150 lines of data. So that's worked for us that's worked for us really well. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a print statement here that says results scraped, and I'm going to then put in X, so it'll tell us how many results we're up to. And I'm also going to slow my scraper down a little bit. I have run this before without doing so, but I don't see the need because I'm not in a hurry. And for each time, I'm going to say time.sleep, and we're going to let it rest for a second in between each request. Actually, let's do 1.5 seconds. So we'll go ahead and take our total results back for the URL. There we go. I've missed a P on sleep, so that won't work. There we go. And my comma there, it's all gone horribly wrong towards the end. Look. So now we can go back through and get all of the results for everything that comes back from this URL, and then save it all to our CSV file, and we should be all good. So I'm just going to let this run, and we'll have a look at the data at the end. Right, so that's all finished and done. Let's have a look at our CSV file. Get rid of that, and we can see that it is 6,439 results, and we can see we've got all that data there. So we could then go and see which were the best deals, or you could just have a more complete list, see if anything takes your fancy. Oh, you might see something and think, oh, that's that price now. Great, I wanted that before, I'll get it now. So this is a kind of a cool way of getting that data out by looking at the request headers for the URL to see what's different, to see how it works. And we did some PD concat as well to merge all of our data frames, create them, and then merge them all together, concatenate them together rather, so we have all the data in one place. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this one and found this useful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. There's loads of web scraping content on my channel already. More to come. I'm doing some more live streams. Hopefully I'll get consistent with that at some point, and we can all have a hangout and a chat and a good time. So thank you very much for sticking by, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you and bye.